All right, I'm going to call our meeting to order. Welcome to the Sunrise School Division Board of Trustees meeting for June the 18th. It's our last regular meeting before the schools break for the summer. So welcome everyone. We are going to have O Canada sung by Gillis School. Please stand if you can do so. Thank you to Gillis School. I'm going to ask Trustee Dent to read out our treaty acknowledgement, please.
We acknowledge the traditional land upon which Sunrise School Division resides as Treaty 1 territory. We honor our partnerships with Canada's original peoples and respect the gifts of Indigenous history, culture, and language. We commit to moving forward in partnership with our communities in the spirit of collaboration and reconciliation.
Thanks, Dustin. Before we start, just a reminder to the people that are online, we have all 9 trustees here: Trustee Dent, Trustee Rowland, Trustee Wilson, Trustee Nicol, Trustee Smith, Trustee Boydson, Trustee Rowan, Trustee Harris, and myself. As well in the room, we have Superintendent Reed, we have Secretary Treasurer Thiessen, we have Assistant Superintendent Fielberg, we have Gord Tulloch, our manager of our ICT, that's here going to give us a presentation. We have our outgoing Superintendent Kathy Timko for her last meeting with us, and we have Sarah Scott, the person that keeps me organized and everyone else organized. So thank you everybody that's here. We're going to adopt our agenda, so please be resolved that the board approve the agenda. I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Trustee Rowan, second by Trustee Nicol. Any questions to the agenda? Okay, hearing none, we'll vote. And it passed 9-0, thank you. So as we move on to sharing a story and Chair's comments, a reminder that if you have any questions, please send them to jody.thiessen@sunrisesd.ca. Please send your name and address, and we will get at the question period at the end of the evening, we'll get to those questions. Share a story. I'm going to open up to the floor. Who would like to share a story? Trustee Rowan.
Lorraine's laughing at me because she can already see how long my list is here with the end of the year. So I'd like to thank Oakbank Playground Committee for having us out to their community barbecue. As a Best Friends level community sponsor of their playground, I was thrilled to receive a thank you card with an awesome drawing made from a grade 2 student. The Springfield Music Parents Association and Springfield Music Association finished up their year on June 10th with their AGM. They've set their meeting dates for the upcoming school year and will be meeting the 3rd Monday of every month and alternating between SCI and SMS. They're hoping to grow their organization next year to include more parents. I've appreciated the opportunity over the last 2 weeks to celebrate our long service and retirees at a dinner put on by the division on June 11th. I also really enjoyed celebrating former trustee Russ Reed as he was honored last night at the Community Futures Winnipeg River AGM and Awards Banquet. SCI's PAC had their final meeting of the school year. They have an AGM currently scheduled for September 24th at 7 p.m. They've been reviewing their constitution, filling their PAC positions, and are looking forward to a great year next year. Looking ahead, I'm excited to be joining Trustee Dent to hand out freezies to students at OBE tomorrow. I'm also looking forward to celebrating the grade 5s at OBE at their farewell assembly on June 25th. I'd like to congratulate all of our graduates that will be celebrating in the next couple of weeks. I'm thrilled to be attending the SCI graduation ceremony again this year. And as our year comes to an end, and this is our last meeting of 23-24 school year, I'd like to finish off by thanking our staff for their commitment to our students all year long. Your hard work and dedication is helping to shape our youth. Thank you for all you do all year long. I hope you enjoy your well-deserved break this summer.
Thank you, Trustee Rowan. That was awesome. Anyone else? Trustee Nicol.
Last time we were here, I mentioned that we were going to have a community picnic, so I'm just reporting on the results. We had over 300 people, that's not including the kids, coming all the way from East Wayne to Seven Sisters to celebrate with the kids at the end of the year.
Thanks, Trustee Nicol. Anyone else? Trustee Boyton.
I just want to say it's a very busy time of year for our schools. Students are excited and staff are exhausted. I attended Hazel Ridge's annual school family picnic on Friday. It was hosted by the PAC. Lots of food, games for the kids. It was a really fun evening and a great turnout. Kudos to the PAC. They are a very active group and provide so much support for the school. So I just want to thank them for all that they do.
Thanks, Trustee Boyton. Trustee Smith.
I just wanted to mention one thing that's coming up. The Edward Schreier grads on the 20th are having their grad parade at 7 p.m. So if anyone's going to be out and about, the grads will be having the parade at 7 p.m. on the 20th around town. Rain date, I believe, is the 21st. So if anyone wants to come and see the grads doing their parade.
Thanks, Alicia. Kathy?
Yeah, I wanted to just do a shout out to all of our graduates right now, and also to all of the folks who generously donate scholarships. We've got all kinds of newspaper articles, and congratulations for all sorts of students who are getting a really great gift from people in our communities. And I've tried to lay low as a superintendent and let our new superintendent take the reins. But this is one that I am super proud to present, because we have a student out in Powerview by the name of Landon Reed who has pulled down a scholarship of $120,000 over 4 years from the Schulich Leaders Scholarship. And it is given to 2 Manitobans, and it is given to 100 across Canada. And he is one of 2 Manitobans to receive a scholarship. And in all my years as superintendent, I have to say I have not seen an amount of this size. So congratulations to Landon. That's a tremendous accomplishment.
Thanks, Kathy. You know, Trustee Ayers?
I cannot follow that up, as Melissa likes to say. Gillis School is having an end-of-year barbecue tomorrow at 4:30 at their school in Tyndall. The community of Tyndall is certainly invited to attend.
Thanks, Trustee Harris. Anyone else? So I'm going to do a little bit of sharing. Is that on June 20th, thank you, is that Powerview is hosting their first showcase powwow. It's going all day. If you can get out there, go ahead and do that. I also received a letter today on behalf of the school division from the Terry Fox Foundation, and certainly this letter going out to all schools, or is mentioning about all schools, about the impact that people have had about raising money, and the money that they've raised over the years. This past year, Sunrise School Division raised $16,532. It's got a second page that talks about the total number of runs that each school has done, probably since for quite some time, and the amount of money that's been raised for the Terry Fox Foundation. I'll share this with all trustees, but it's pretty impressive, you know, when you get small schools like Whitemouth School and the amount of money that they're going out and raising, and this goes out to all of our schools. So I'll share this with all trustees, but it's very impressive. It's a letter from the Terry Fox Foundation, so pretty impressive. And Kathy, I was about to say that there's a hockey player on my team that since I've taught him everything that he knows about hockey, he was the one that won the Schuler Prize, and I must have been so influential on him. But Trevor, that's quite a big deal. I know we often don't toot our your kid's horn, those kind of things, but as what Kathy said, Schulich scholarships aren't given out to just anyone, and $120,000 over 4 years, pretty impressive. So congratulations to Landon, and we know where Landon gets it from all the work that I did with him in hockey, I guess. So, anyone else, anything to share? All right. I'm going to turn this then over to you, Trev. Are you introducing? Okay, Jody. I'm going to turn this over to you, Jody, so that you can introduce our presenter.
Our next presenter, I might have to move this. There we go. Our next presenter we have is the last one of the operational showcase. We have Best for Last, I believe it's called, right? So I have Gord here, Gord Tulloch. He is our director of our ICT department, and what ICT stands for is Information Communications Technology. So a very long title, but lots of work being done in his department. So they work on their phones and the computers and helping with applications. So it's very busy amongst all the schools and all the operations. So thank you tonight, Gord, for coming out and showing the board what your department's all about. So I'll hand it over to you, and your ClickShare is all working. You're good. Did you need some IT help over there?
I've got to call one of my guys to come and help me. Well, thank you very much for inviting me over. Hopefully I'm not going to feedback because I speak loudly as it is. And hello to those of you who I've not met. It's a pleasure to come here once a year and tell you how things are going in ICT. The state of ICT is good. And although it's been a very busy year, and we've got lots to do over the summer, we don't stop. As a matter of fact, we just go faster over the summer because we got a lot of work to do. And I'll talk about that a little bit. I only have 20 minutes, and I probably have 2 hours of content, so we'll whip through it pretty quick. 10 minutes, okay. I saw 20 minutes on that thing. Anyway, your ICT team is a very stable team, but we have had some retirements lately, and over the past few years we have had some new faces in ICT, which is fantastic. We've got some folks that bring new perspectives and some freshness to the whole organization. A lot of us have been here for quite a while, and we continue to enjoy being here. More than half of our staff are resident in the division and have kids actually in the division, so a very stable and committed workforce. So we do have our Oakbank Tech Center where we have currently 5 people. We are adding an application support specialist. Thank you very much for that. And that person will be taking care of the applications that we run within the division. And that's, as you will see when we look at we take a quick look at our service desk statistics. We spend a lot of time supporting applications in the division. And we just seem to acquire more applications, and we need to support them. So that's something that we're adding resources to. We have server specialists that take care of the servers and the wide area network and the internet connections. And of course, we have our ICT technicians who go out to the schools and do desk side support and support our teachers and administrators and students to some degree. We have had a change where we're now supporting the northern schools. I guess the western schools, Whitemouth up through Powerview, are now being supported by Brendan Black out of Beausejour, and that's actually going pretty well. So we don't anticipate that changing. So a year in a review, and we had a new phone system that we implemented using Microsoft Teams Phone, and new computers that we implemented in the Beausejour cluster. We tend to do a cluster at a time, so Beausejour was last year. We did some pilots of new computers to essentially double the number of computers that we can put into the schools by buying cheaper computers that may not be as powerful, but are now good enough because a lot of the work that gets done has been moved into the cloud and onto other people's computers. So we can do stuff with lower end computers and buy more of them so more kids have them in their hands. Implemented Valley Fiber and Oakbank Campus, Gillis, Enola, and Hazel Ridge. That's slower than we would have liked. We'd like to do the whole division before now, but that should be done by the end of the summer. We deployed some parent portals and student portals to Ed Schreier and SCI, primarily to support scheduling operations. Kids can actually go in and enter their choices for their courses, and it goes into the scheduling application. But that portal also allows parents to look at marks, parents to look at schedules, all that sort of stuff, and that's live on those two schools now. We implemented scheduling for Power School, which turned out to be non-trivial. Turned out to be a lot bigger than we thought it was, so we ended up sending one of my staff as well as a couple of vice principals to Calgary for some intensive training in how to run the scheduling module of Power School, so that is now up and running. And internally, we've implemented some new software within ICT that allows us to provide better analytics, better information to the division, and make better decisions. And we're using a tool called Power BI, which is a Microsoft tool that we've used in doing marks reporting and other stuff. We've now started providing that information to senior management from ICT. So now that I've talked about all of the stuff on these slides, I'll probably go through these slides fairly quickly. But just to give you some highlights, we're now in year 3 of our 5-year cycle, and I do have a listing of the 5-year cycle in one slide. I know there was an inquiry about that. The good news is Anola is replacing 12 of their desktops with 24 smaller laptops, so they're able to increase their number of computers. Oakbank Elementary is replacing 45 computers with 90, so they're definitely getting closer to a ratio of computers to students that we like to see. A large number of monitors that are smaller are being replaced with standard 1080p monitors. So we're looking at getting 600 odd computers delivered in the 3rd week of July, and we'll have them in place before the 1st week of August. So this is our rotation. As you can see, 2022, we did the western schools. I tend to call them the northern schools, but of course Whitemouth isn't very north. Last year we did the Beausejour area as well as new. We now have SEC, SBC, and transportation on the rotation, so the administrative side of Sunrise is now on the same 5-year computer rotation as everyone else. This year it's the Springfield area and some student support services, a few student support services. So those are the big ones. That's almost 1,800 computers, and then after that we have colonies, adult, alternate ed, and some more student support services next year, and then 2026 is just maybe occasional laptop cart and that sort of thing. So that's kind of the rotation. They're all on a lease. They're rotated over 5 years. At the end of the lease, they're recycled by the leasing company. We return them to the leasing company. They're recycled. And either if they're reusable, they're redeployed to other people who might need them. Otherwise, they're recycled, and their component parts are used. So this is the kind of information that we provide in Power BI. This is pulling directly live out of our online systems, and I'm not going to go through it line by line, much as I really want to, but you can see that right now we've got, if you look at the schools, what we really want to maintain in the schools is about a 2.6 to 1 average of pupils to computers, and in some cases about half the schools will achieve that. It's a little harder to achieve in a big school, and it's a little less impactful if they don't have that ratio. In small schools, they tend to have a larger ratio of computers to kids simply because they've got less kids and more computers. But we do have a measure that came from Stats Canada, a measure of wellness quite a while ago, that has worked pretty well for us, and that sort of allows us to suggest to senior management areas where we can augment our fleet of computers and try to provide some equity within the division. So we're about 50-50 desktops and laptops now. We have a series of different laptops, so you'll probably see the laptop number next year will be much larger than the desktop number, simply because we tend to deploy more laptops than desktops these days. So, and of course we have devices being used by non-students as well, but we've got about almost 2,000 computers in use by students in the division. Those computers are leased, and as you can see, we have about 1,700 leased computers in the division, and this summer, I think it's just over 600 computers we'll be swapping out. So we do about a third of that. Previously, we used HP. Now we're using Lenovo. So this little graph in the corner here, where you see HP versus Lenovo, will reverse. This summer, we'll be flushing out a lot of the HPs. And we do have schools that have purchased computers that are not on our rotation, and that's becoming a bit of a concern. And for example, Windows has a new version, and the old version is being made obsolete. And what do? Because if they stop updating it, the security changes, and we need to do something about it. So we are in constant communication with the schools when we're doing these computer changes to see what they want to do. Are these computers still needed? Is there something we can do, some funding we can find to replace them so that we maintain security in the network and provide students with computers that are up to date and able to do what they need them to do. So one of the big projects we're doing right now is a migration of our data center out of Oakbank Elementary and the Business Center to our main service provider, which is Merlin. Merlin's a special operating agency of the province, which is given the task of providing internet and licensing of Microsoft and other products to all of the school divisions in Manitoba. So they're our internet service provider. Recently, they started offering infrastructure as a service, it's called, and that means that we don't have to buy our own servers and big disk arrays and all that sort of stuff. We can use theirs. The savings is considerable. If moving our data centers to Merlin will cost us about 10 grand a year, and our costs normally to lease the equipment and maintain it is about $105,000. So it's a $95,000 a year net savings, which is pretty good. The new phone system, always a kind of traumatic thing for ICT, because phone systems are generally not cooperative. Phone companies are generally not cooperative, and there's always some issues that cause a lot of stress across the board. So we don't like to do it, but our service provider has essentially obsoleted the phone system we used, and they were going to give us a new one at a much higher rate. So we were changing anyway. So we went with something that was more cost effective and functional within our environment. We're big users of Microsoft Teams across the board, so this phone system now integrates with Microsoft Teams. So it's no different calling somebody somewhere in the division versus calling somebody outside. You can do it through your Teams client with a headset, with a handset, all very integrated. So Teams is a good choice, but of course it's a change, and there's always some issues with changes. MTS delayed some transition to Rogers, who's doing our new back end, and that caused some schools to be delayed. There were some problems with Teams releasing an update which broke our handsets, so some of our handsets didn't work all that well for the first month. That all got fixed, and there were problems between MTS and Rogers causing echoes and that sort of thing. So all that got resolved. Huge props to Kevin Lang, our server specialist in Beausejour, from Beausejour. He did a huge amount of work on the phone system and got it all working and got it all up and running very quickly, and continues to maintain it. So he's doing a fantastic job for us. Valley Fiber was given a huge grant by the province to put fiber across the province, and we're leveraging that to replace a lot of the radio links that we have between our schools with fiber. There will be fiber to all of our major schools by the end of the summer, which improves performance immeasurably, improves reliability, and allows us actually to do things like move the data center to Merlin, because we have a really, really good internet connection. If we didn't have that, we couldn't do that kind of thing. So it saves us a lot of money. And changing providers from MTS to Merlin actually saved us about 80 grand a year. So we got all of our schools hooked up with fiber instead of just a couple, which we had previously, and we saved money doing it. So progress is a wonderful thing. So the implementations is very slow due to that lack of human resources at the vendor side. They can't find enough people to dig cables into the ground fast enough to get all this stuff put in. But we're looking at hopefully getting everything up and running before school comes back in September. So fingers crossed. Service desk is the way we get our work given to us. Schools call the service desk or send an email in or write it on a napkin or whatever they need to do to tell us that we have work to do. At any given time, we have about 220 tickets open. We generally get about 4,600 tickets a year across the board. 1,197 of them last year were adds, moves, and changes of staff. So we get that from HR. So they're busy, and then we get busy. Overall average of closing is about 9.45 days. Generally, actually, the numbers are a little better than that. I'll just go to the next slide, which is, again, a live view at our service desk system. We've gotten 4,450 tickets so far, which is about average, usually about 46. And it looks like about half of them are being closed within 5 days. A lot of ordering happening right now, so we do have stuff that's a little longer than 5 days, but we like to see more than half of the tickets being closed within 5 days. Generally, we see a lot of tickets, 1,150 of them, which is a quarter of them being closed within a day. So you put a ticket in, you call our service desk, and it's dealt with right away. So we're trying to keep that service standards up. There's a lot of information here I won't go into. The number one biggest, I'm looking at the wrong year. Who did that? Who changed the year? Okay, not a huge amount. You know, our biggest amount of business comes from people looking for help from Power School. So we can, if we drill into that, we can see that a lot of that work's being done by our technician, Lindsay Fernando. And that's work that we'll now be splitting out, and there'll be a new role picking up all of that work, and Lindsay, or a technician, will be taking on the stuff that she does. So it's a lot of work and a lot of room for growth in supporting not only Power School, our student information system, but all the other applications that we have. So. Challenges. How am I doing for time? I'm over? Oh my goodness, time flies when I'm having fun. I'm going to talk really, I thought I talked fast before. So as I mentioned, we're having issues, and it's just an ongoing challenge that schools have purchased devices. 5 years later, what do we do with them, right? So we're working to stick handle that through. Definitely, I think I've come here every year and said we have some challenges in replacing equipment, particularly our what we're calling interactive displays now, smart boards, lofts. We have some ViewSonics now. If you look at the numbers, essentially, and if you look at interactive boards, we have 88 interactive boards which were purchased in 2014 or before. And that means that they're dying, and classrooms are experiencing an outage where the teacher doesn't have a smart board. What are we going to do? So replacing those smart boards is a priority. We've been replacing a lot of them. This was much more dire even 2 years ago, but we still have a lot of work to do to find the funding to get those replaced so that we have a new board. The good news is we started replacing the smart boards with smart TVs in about 2014, 2015, and those are still going strong with very little problems, so we can forecast that our problem is going to get less dire over time because these TVs are lasting a good long time. So, but it's definitely a challenge that ICT has been dealing with. I apologize for making wholesale changes in this slide, but my staff actually, when I reviewed this presentation with them, corrected me on some things, which is great. Unfortunately, it was after I gave my slide deck to Jody. But if you check your notes, it's a little more dire than this. About a quarter of our iPad fleet is quite old, and I'll just flip to the slot, the inventory. We have 1066 iPads in the division right now, and about a quarter of them are fairly old and cannot be updated and require replacement. This is good because it was worse before, so we've been making a lot of progress in replacing iPads. We're going to have a bit of a bump next year we bought a whole bunch of iPads in post-COVID days, and those are getting older and they're going to need to be replaced. So this is kind of an ongoing challenge on how do we find the funding or how do we say to the schools, you know, you're going to have to change because the equipment's not going to be available because it's just too old, right? So nobody wants to have those kind of discussions, so the optimal would be to continue to refresh that equipment and give the schools the opportunity to potentially move into a different equipment based on what their needs are. We've seen, for example, iPads have actually taken some of the load that used to be smartboards, right? Because the interactivity used to be on a smartboard and do that kind of stuff. Now it's actually sitting in the kids' hands in an iPad. So we have seen some evolution of classroom technology which can obviate some of these challenges, but we're still constantly playing catch up to make sure this equipment is kept up to date. Next year, you're going to hear me talking about network refreshes. Our network equipment is coming off lease next year, and prices have doubled on that equipment. So it's going to be quite a challenge to find equipment that we can afford, potentially let our equipment run longer than it has in the past, and keep the current standard, which is close to 5 nines of reliability, so about 10 hours of downtime a year. A lot of that downtime is actually Merlin versus us. Our internal networks tend to be pretty robust. Merlin and MTS tend to be not so robust, so not much we can do about that. But we want to maintain our internal uptime, so it's not us, it's them. AI has been a challenge, and I'll end quickly with just some models. AI, I would say AI with some air quotes because it's not really AI. Large language models and generative AI is a challenge in the classroom, definitely to teachers, and we'll try to bring thought leadership into the division to help us with that. But we also have opportunities that we don't want to miss, because you can implement AI within the division so that it's actually looking at information within the division. So if a teacher wants to ask a question, show me all of the teachers who have created physics curriculum and handouts related to kinetic motion. You can actually do that kind of query within the division and have it pull information within the division. The problem is we want to make sure that the information that AI is looking at is information that teachers actually wanted to be public, because sometimes it's easy to make it kind of public, but security through obscurity, nobody notices until an AI comes back with a query that reveals that information. So there's a lot of work that ICT has to do before we can enable that kind of integration. But I'll just if you look at this slide, which is in your package, and you look at the ways that not only teachers but all staff can use these computers to really save them a lot of time. So instead of me having to create a slide deck like this, I can provide a summary to Copilot, which is Microsoft's flavor of AI, and say, create a slide deck for me, and it'll generate the slide deck, and then my expertise is fixing it and making sure it's correct. And so if a teacher says, give me a lesson plan based on the Manitoba curriculum for physics in grade 12 for the kinetic energy module, then the grunt work of going and looking for that stuff can be done for them, and then they can use their expertise to create an appropriate document out of that. So there's huge opportunities. Microsoft is really leading the charge in integrating that with your day-to-day tools that we use all day, and we're looking forward to assisting them in doing that in a safe way that doesn't cause any problems with information being let loose without us intending to. And sorry I went over time, but if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, or send me an email.
Thanks, Gord. We appreciate that. As you go over time, it just lessens your budget next year, so keep on talking, and that's fine. Are there any questions for Gord? Trustee Rowan.
You talked about Power Schools and the parent portal. I know some of our schools have struggled a little bit with getting that up and running. I'm curious to know if we're still seeing problems there, or if you're getting fewer calls on that.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear part of that. The struggling with problems with?
The parent portal through Power Schools?
We did have some issues initially with the first rollout at SCI. We're not aware of any other issues that are being reported to us from the schools. If issues are being reported, they're coming in through our service desk and they're hopefully being resolved. If they're not being resolved, then the parents should be escalating that to the schools, and then the students can, or I should say the schools can use our escalation process to ensure that we're looking at it. But as far as I know, there's no problems that are kind of systemic. You know, parents forget their passwords, and we deal with that. And sometimes a lot of them forget their passwords at once, and it takes us a while to respond. But generally, hopefully, we're out of the woods and we're post-implementation on that.
Anyone else for Gord? Trustee Dent?
I have a few questions here. So also too, a question about the parent portal. How do we know, or do we know if parents are using the parent portal?
Schools get reports. I don't look at those reports, but we created a report for the school specifically to let them know what the uptake is. I understand the uptake was quite good. I haven't looked at those reports since we rolled them out, so I looked at them early on, so I can't tell you what they are right now. Certainly we can come back and report to the board what those are.
We've seen an expansion of esports within the division. I'm wondering if your team has a role with supporting our esports groups and understanding that some of them are using different types of computers, so some of them I think are Mac-based and some of them are PCs. So how are we able to diversify your team and your support to, are we including esports in that?
We work really closely with Nathan Koblun over at Dugald for esports. We've assisted him in setting up the network and integrating his in a lot of cases, kids bring their own computers and consoles to play. We have not purchased computers specifically for esports. No, I'm lying because they actually did, sorry. There were some computers, I think, purchased specifically for esports, and we got those set up, and we continue to support them. So we're fully supportive of esports. There's no sort of formal program in Sunrise on esports, but definitely ICT is intimately involved with supporting teachers who are innovating in that area.
Two more. So you had mentioned smart boards versus smart TVs. And you had stated that smart TVs have a longer life expectancy. I'm just wondering, from a budgetary perspective, what that cost looks like, and are they equivalent in means for the teacher to be able to provide their lesson planning or their programming?
Yeah, the smart board we're referring to is it's a different a format. It's generally a board that has a projector pointed at it, and the problem we usually have is the projector dies, and who wants to buy a $1,500 projector to our smart board that's about to die too? So that's the issue. They're functionally the same. There's a bit of churn because they're 16:9 widescreen ratio versus 4:3, so some teachers had to reformat their slide decks and that sort of thing. But generally, they're functionally similar. Often teachers use a piece of software called Smart Notebook to use with those devices, and schools license Smart Notebook for those teachers so that they can take full advantage of Smart Notebook. So it's functionally the same. It's just a TV lasts a lot longer than a projector and a board.
Sorry, so then the cost, if we're looking at purchasing cost?
A smart TV is going to cost $4,000. A smart board is no longer available, so it's $4,000. They used to be a little cheaper, and in some cases schools made the decision to go to the smart board, but that hasn't been the case since 2014. It's pretty much smart TVs are all that's available. Prices have gone down by half, which is great. Smart used to be quite expensive, and with Loft and now ViewSonic, it's become more of a commodity and it's less expensive. But when you factor in installation and wiring and all that kind of stuff, it's still $4,000 a unit to put in.
And then I had one more. So I'm just trying to still formulate the question, but I'll give it a go here. How is your team able to keep up with some more of the innovative equipment that some schools might need? So understanding that a school might need to purchase a more elaborate computer with higher processing speeds for like design and that kind of stuff. How are we able to accommodate that? Are we able to accommodate that within the team that we have, or do we need to kind of contract that support elsewhere?
Well, we've done both, and we have contractors we work with quite often for various things. But for example, there's a Mac lab in SCI, and Macs are an entirely different skill set than Windows in a lot of ways. So previously we contracted with a vendor to help us support our Mac environment. That was no longer available to us last summer when we replaced 25 Macs in SCI, which is the only Macs we have in the division. So one of our staff, Kenton Lumsden, took it upon himself to learn how to do Mac, and he spent the summer learning how to do Mac, and he now supports that lab, which is kind of in his school. Similarly, in the same school, SCI, they started using Unity, which is a different type of programming environment for building games, and they needed a higher-end computer. It was a bit of a quandary because we have budgeted for a certain amount of basic computers for that lab. They needed the higher-end lab, so we worked with Kevin and Trevor to figure out where that funding was coming from, and Mr. Reed found some money for us, and we were able to put that in. The thing is, you got to make a decision, and it's going to last you 5 years because the lease is 5 years. So right now is when we have to figure that stuff out and get it in there because we can't change course midway. Of course, it's incumbent on the teachers not to change path midway, or we have a real challenge to support them, but we've been able to.
Anyone else? Questions? Trustee Harris?
Certainly the use of computers and computer technology in society is ever growing and certainly and very important. So thank you, Gord, for the short presentation tonight. Quick question. You mentioned a co-pilot for teachers. I get the impression from the brief little bit you mentioned there that it allows the teacher to ask the computer to do the work for them to create a slideshow or something. Is that the basic idea?
I look at it as taking away the drudgery type work, as computers are supposed to do, and they have to some degree, but you still have to do some of the drudge work to create the document and format it and all that kind of stuff. And the large language models and things like Copilot have been engineered to take that basic information that the teacher provides, which is the subject matter expertise, right? They're the ones that are providing that expertise, and do all the drudgery of getting it in the format they want. And AIs are pretty stupid generally, so they don't do a great job in making it accurate. But of course, you've got a subject matter expert that they can then look at it and say, okay, that's wrong, right, and fix it up. But a lot of the drudgery that's involved in creating all of the documentation and everything that we create, a lot of it hopefully will be shouldered by these AI services that are coming on stream very, very quickly.
So to turn that around, and maybe it's a moral question, is there a application out there called Copilot for Students that allows students to ask the computer to take the drudgery out of their day-to-day work and say, I want an 85% mark?
Sure is, and remember I said AIs are stupid? So if I was a student and I asked an AI to write a paper for me, I had better hope I understand what that paper's all about so that I can correct it, because AIs are stupid, right? So that may be, and I'm not an educator and I don't profess to be able to comment directly on the impact of educators, and it is quite extreme, right? I think maybe the evolution will be that teachers will get really good at seeing how stupid AIs answer their questions, and then they can compare that to where students have answered their questions, and it's probably going to be fairly easy to see where a student has not absorbed the content. But again, is that such a bad thing that a student can get the computer to do the drudge work, and then they exercise the knowledge that they've learned in class to actually correct it and make it so that they get a good mark on their paper?
Thank you, Gord, for coming out tonight.
Anyone else for Gord? Trustee Rowland?
Just a little further to Robin's topic there.
Is there tools available for teachers to help them to scrutinize student work, to identify AI, stuff like this, or even plagiarism and stuff like that? Because obviously, as you suggest, students will be going to do the grunt work eventually, and what's our teachers to do?
Yes, but they're bad. So it's not, universities, of course, have spent a lot of time experimenting with these things, and I think the consensus is they're not effective. They have a lot of false positives that can have significant impact on a student that makes it undesirable to try to use these tools in practice.
Anyone else? So Gord, I have a couple for you. So I see Cassandra here is a classroom teacher and she's walking around with a laptop, yet we don't provide our teachers with laptops. So I came from a division where every teacher had a laptop that they could take home. Now I'm not sure if that's the board not making that decision or what, but when I see this on here, I think that's a great idea, but we don't provide teachers with laptops. Comment or suggestion or?
Well, there's some reasons. One is we give teachers a desktop computer, and generally, especially teachers who have smart boards, which is obviously a lot of teachers, smart desktop computers have more capability to drive a smart board than a laptop. We have had schools that have given teachers laptops and found that they gathered dust on the teacher's desk as opposed to being mobile, so they weren't as productive as they could have been as a laptop device. So, I rely on the principals and our administration to provide the feedback. If we were in a position to provide laptops for every teacher and it was of benefit, then we'd find a way to do so. But at this point, that discussion has not resulted in a decision that we should give a laptop to every teacher.
Thanks, Gord. That's something for us to think about. A conversation I think that's probably for September, October that we would like to know is the thing that you brought up with regard to school bought devices versus divisional bought devices, and how we support those things. Let's have a conversation, I think, September, October as to where we are. The inventories that were on here, we really can't click on to get through your what's it called? There you go. So is there a way that we can see those inventories ourselves? Is there a way that you can provide that to us?
Well, sometimes it's better not to give too much information, but because it requires some interpretation. And I did put a bit of a disclaimer at one of the slides that we're going to be auditing some of our inventories this summer because we know, for example, the ratio at Lac Du Bonnet is probably off, right? So I wouldn't embark on that until we were sure. And then again, it might be, and also there's a license involved. We have to pay $35 a head for these Power BI licenses. So right now it's divisional staff, principals and secretaries that have access to them for various applications. So we'd have to pay for that as well. So it might be more efficient to ask a question and we can provide the answer than provide the raw data for you to explore.
Okay. So I think, though, that come September, October, though, I know there's one trustee that's interested in our inventory as to what we have out in our schools and whatnot. But again, we as a group make group discussions. We'll go from there. The last thing is, what was your takeaway from, when we had the phones, we implemented the phones, and we had some difficulty. What was the takeaway to avoid that in the future? Because we heard lots about it. What's our takeaway from that?
Avoid changing the phone system ever again, which I haven't been too successful at because that's our third crack at it. I'm hoping that it will be a long time before we have to replace it again. It's really hard to test because to test these things in a lot of cases, you actually have to switch over. And once you've switched over, it takes the phone companies a week to do it. Once you're switched over, it's another week to go back. So it's kind of do whatever testing you can up front, which we certainly did, get testimonials and references from other school divisions that have used the same technology, other companies, and then just try to mitigate as much as possible the issues that arise. So You know, as I said, whenever somebody says it's time to change the phone system, I crawl under my desk and hide because it's never pleasant, and it's never pleasant for the users either because that's change and people don't like change. So, you know, all we can do is test, figure out what is, you know, known good equipment, and then hope for the best.
Thanks, Gord. So the last question is, I ask everybody, and you got 30 seconds to answer this, because I know what the answer is going to be. Through your presentation, you've talked about more, I guess, or money, or budget, or those kind of things, because some of the things that are coming up. You got 9 trustees listening to you. What's on the horizon for us?
Well, obviously, some funding has been provided, and that will be very helpful in you know, moving forward with some of this replacement. You know, I think as well we need to, as a division, and the educators and the administrators need to validate that this is actually technology that is productive and you could use. You know, a smart board, $4,000 smart panel that has like a grease spot in the corner because the teacher is just advancing PowerPoint slides could be a projector, right? So I think most of our effort moving forward will be devoted to not necessarily finding more money, but finding more efficient ways to spend our money. A good example is the smaller laptops for schools. We can double the number of laptops that we can put out in the field by going with a lower level laptop, which is sufficient. So we put those laptops into Beausejour early years for testing. Mike Carter came back and said they're working really well for our students. I think this is a good thing. And that's when we open it up and deploy it in other schools, Enola and OB specifically this summer. So there's lots of opportunity for efficiency. And as well in our back end, we're saving a lot of money in the back end that can be put towards these things. So am I asking for a bigger budget? No, I'm saying we've got work to do, and you know, there may be some decisions that will come up to this level that maybe need to be made that to support being able to operate within our means for technology.
Well, thanks, Gord. This is lots of information for us. We appreciate it. It's always I guess my experience has been with ICT is that people are always asking for more in schools, and as Dustin's talking about, whether we're doing esports and et cetera, and Mac labs and those kind of things. But kudos to you and your team for the work that you're doing, and we appreciate you coming out tonight and helping us out. And of course, it's a busy summer always as you change over whatever 450 computers. So good luck to your team, and thanks for coming out tonight. We're going to move forward with our minutes. 5.1, be it resolved that the board adopt the June 4th regular meeting minutes. I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by trustee Boyson, seconded by trustee Dent. Any questions on this? Hearing none, we'll vote. And we passed 9-0. Thank you. We have our superintendent's report. Trevor?
Thank you. So, sorry. Let's put the report up there. One of the things we had hoped for before the end of the year, the board requested, was the full report on our universally accessible nutrition program. But unfortunately, to date, that has not been approved by the province yet. They were hoping to get back to school divisions by June the 1st with their approval. So instead of delivering a full report, we'll actually just wait sure that our delivery model is actually approved, and I'll report to the board in the fall on that. We do know that the dollar amount is actually approved, so that's not the concern. What we're waiting for approval on is actually the school plans of how they want to share nutrition with their students. However, there were some questionable items that I wasn't sure if they were going to fit the criteria, so I reached out directly to the province and received confirmation back that those actually were things that were going to be approved. So I think everything under that, I'm very, very confident, is also going to be approved as well. It's just timelines from the province in terms of getting that approval back. So with that, our province has asked schools to be ready to go for September. So we have okayed schools to start spending against the plans that they have submitted. Took a bit of a leap of faith there, but I really do feel confident that the delivery models the schools have selected will be approved because reading the provincial criteria, they are well within scope. So that's where we are with that. As many of you would know, because you were in attendance, we had our long service and retirement event last week, and if you were in attendance, I think you saw that that was received very favorably by those that participated. I know it was mentioned at the event, but I think it's worth mentioning again. Lots of people contributed to that, but especially Jennifer Baker, Sarah Scott, and Yvonne Brandt, who did most of the heavy lifting in terms of making sure all those logistics were taken care of so we could all enjoy a very special evening together. So thank you to those three. And then something we've talked about before at this table, you are all aware that we have our Divisional Professional Development Day. First time we'll be getting all the division staff together here in Beausejour. We'll do that on October the 18th. Just a quick update that much of the planning for that event has actually already occurred. Lots of our speakers have been, booked and scheduled. And just a big thank you to Jody Wilgosh, our division principal, and our program leader team who are pulling together the educational side of that. So yeah, we're well positioned, for that day, even though we're just heading into summer break. And then finally, just speaking of summer break, just that acknowledgement, it's been mentioned before, that as we come to the end of the school year, a big thank you going out to our staff for all the time and work and commitment that they give to our students and our families, so a big thank you to them. But we also think of the school year coming to an end, and for some that it is, and for our 10-month employees, they will enjoy a summer vacation. But let's not forget that we have several 12-month employees through our school division as well. And when the students leave, some of those employees get busier, like our ICTs or our custodians. So while they're working hard over the summer, we'll also hope that they get some time off to enjoy some of the nice summer weather that we're bound to get sooner or later, with family and friends. And so thank you to all of our staff and the work that they've done this year.
Thanks, Trevor. Any questions for Trevor? Okay. 6.2 is the draft reporting schedule. It's certainly almost complete. The only thing I think, Trevor, that's still outstanding, and we know about that, is some of our provincial assessment data. But I think that we have that all complete. And you have later on certainly about the next steps for next year. And we'll talk about that there. Any questions on that information for now? Okay, let's keep moving on. 7.1, Secretary Treasurers, Jody.
Yeah, thank you. I have updated the Secretary Treasurer report. I was away on Friday and feeling under the weather, and I realized I forgot some very important information under my miscellaneous page. So I'd like to give a shout out to the Oakbank Elementary Playground Committee. They have worked really, really hard over the last couple of years getting the playground and outside classroom up and going. And a few members of the board attended. I have a wonderful picture here showing that we were using some of the outdoor play structure and the music instruments outside. Very, very cool. I just want to say thank you to Chandra Schultz for her dedication to the project. The students in the school is very fortunate to have someone with that much passion living in the community. It was really, really wonderful working with Chandra. I had all the confidence in the world with her when she was going and getting pricing and keeping me up to date with that project. Sometimes you work with a community group and you really don't know where they're going to be and what they're up to, but she kept me informed all the way through, and I let her know I'd be happy to work with her on any project in the future. So thank you so much, Chandra, and thank you so much to the Playground Committee. On another note, we were busy out and about. The Ad Hoc Land Planning Committee was able to meet the Minister of Education, Nello Altomar, and I was fortunate to take a wonderful picture with the group. With him, we had a wonderful conversation about the needs for the school division and what we had as results for that landmark planning enrollment capacity report, which identified growing areas in our Sunrise communities. So we were able to express our concerns and what we'd like to see in the future for our schools or the areas of our school division. So it was those were two wonderful events in the last 2 weeks that we were able to attend. And the last thing I want to talk about is tonight, I haven't had a chance to really say anything about Kathy's last board meeting, but throughout all these meetings, I've always thought I'll have a moment to recognize Kathy in her capacity as my boss and all the wonderful things she taught me. So I just want to say it's been a pleasure working with you. I'm going to really try not to choke up or anything, but your leadership skills have been amazing. I learned so much from you, and I'm greatly, greatly appreciative of being able to come back to Sunrise and work with this wonderful board that I think you helped have an influence on how well this board is functioning. Your passion for student learning is very influential. It rubs off. It makes me realize not only am I here as a secretary-treasurer making sure the books are in order, but I'm also here to help educate students as well in any capacity I have. And that's because I can talk to you about anything, and you'll always remind me what it's about. So I just want to say I thank you for having the opportunity to work with you, and you've been wonderful and a wonderful, true person, very authentic, and I look forward to seeing you outside of work. Thank you.
Any questions for Jody? Well put, Jody. Okay, let's move on. We're going to move on to board business, and we have Mr. Wilgosh here, so I'm going to let Mr. Reed introduce Mr. Wilgosh.
Well, I think as the board knows, Mr. Jody Wilgosh is one of our division principals, and he's coming to us this evening with phys ed review. And certainly when he speaks about physical education, he's coming with a deep background and understanding, as that's where his area of training and expertise was before he took over a school leadership role and eventually his role at the division. So welcome, Jody.
Check, check. Evening. So what I've done is I've taken snippets from the full program review and put them into a PowerPoint. So I've taken pretty much the executive summary that's in there, some of the quotes, and then the recommendations. And so feel free to ask any questions as I go through, and I'll pull some stats out as I go through. So the purpose was to review the phys ed program for this school year, identify successes, and to recommend actions to strengthen physical education programming in Sunrise. In the process, so we interviewed, surveyed all the phys ed teachers, students, and admin to determine strengths, challenges, issues, and next steps. 15 phys ed teaching staff completed the survey. That's about 72%, so pretty good ratio. All admin provided feedback at our SELT meeting in March. And we had 175 students complete the survey from grades 4 to 10, and the schools that we went to were eBays, Gillis, Lac du Bonnet Senior, OB, SMS, SCI, and Whitemouth. Couple summaries from the students. It's pretty clear that they enjoy phys ed classes. They appreciate their phys ed teachers and the variety of activities that are provided for them. And students would like access to more equipment and better quality equipment in their phys ed classes. And one of the kind of standout stats, 61% of students say that they have the equipment that they need, while 36% say only sometimes they have the equipment that they need. And some student quotes. In my opinion, it is being active because I love running, jumping, and everything in between. In my school, I love how my teachers are always very helpful and always put us first, and I really appreciate them for that. I would say the best thing about PE is how we get to play many different sports and how we get to learn about each other in the process, how fellow students play in the certain sports. Direct quote. And PE can be improved in my school with better equipment and more equipment. We don't always have enough of something for everyone to get one, so we have to share, or some people can't play. Phys ed teachers. They take pride in their programs and the active engagement of their students in the variety of activities they provide. That was very clear. They would like an increase in phys ed supply budgets to make up for inflationary pressure so that every student has the equipment they need to fully participate in phys ed classes. And they would like a divisional plan to address the condition of our tracks and fields. Phys ed teacher quotes, a great number of early and middle year students showing excitement at being able to participate in inter-school sport for cross-country and counting down until they get to grade 6, 7, and 8 when there are more opportunities for them. It's pretty clear in their responses that since the pandemic there's been more of a rush into sports, so there's more kids playing sports on sports teams, there's more kids playing intramurals, there's a lot more involvement. Cost of everything keeps going up, but phys ed budgets don't. Feel like we're always asking for money because our budget is already spent. And I don't feel we should have to use our supply budgets to buy things like safety padding on walls, around basketball boards, etc. One of the data sources that I looked at was I took a 3-year average of the phys ed supply budgets, and on average, there's schools that are in deficit of $1,033. That's averaging over 3 years. And I can tell you as a school principal, it's this time of the year when the orders go in for next year, and so when we come back in September and all the supplies come in, it's usually about 80% of that phys ed supply budget is spent. So of all the school budgets, sometimes as admin, we don't do a great job of spending things when we should. Phys ed is not that, we don't have that issue in phys ed. That money gets spent early, and we're usually at a point where we need to be taking money from other places. Because things come up during the year, things out of our control. One of the things that just happened this year, we're governed, our high school sports are governed by the Manitoba High School Athletic Association. This year they had a new official basketball that they introduced in November, just before basketball season, when everybody's already ordered all of their supplies. They're on sale for $109. Most schools need to buy about 15 for each team, so that's about $3,500 that need to be spent on new basketballs. They may have bought new basketballs the year before, and so this happened without warning, and so that's just an example of some things that can happen. Oh, one other one, sorry. Everyone is actively engaged in lots of positive feedback from students about what they learn and do in phys ed. And the last one, admin. They appreciate how phys ed teachers keep students active and use all available spaces for their programming. Like to see increased budgets to purchase more equipment, ensure all students can access the equipment they need, as well as a divisional plan for purchasing big ticket items like mats to be in compliance with MPAS. And so if you're not familiar with MPAS, it is the new safety standards for Manitoba. They took what used to be Youth Safe Manitoba and Manitoba Safety Guidelines, as well as Swim Safe. Any Manitoba safety document was all kind of put into one. It's in a very nice package on a website, and it is supported by MSBA. Some of the standards in there, many of our schools haven't been able to meet yet. There are still guidelines. It has not become officially mandatory yet. I think there's some school divisions that are, well, I think everybody's having some difficulty with some of the MATS provisions. Things like used to be 2 inches, now need to be 3 inches behind basketball backboards, and different safety mat things that have come up. And they want to be able to provide more access to gym space. A couple of admin quotes. Our teacher adapts and is creative to make the different grade groups work well. Our program lacks dollars. Big ticket items need to be addressed, such as volleyball standards and gym floors. So, recommendations. Clearly, the first one would be to increase all phys ed supply budgets to match inflation. So I've talked a little bit just about how those dollars get spent early, and on average, $1,000 per school, they are in a deficit situation. Divisionally, there's a divisional supply line that is there to help offset some of the costs for schools. it's $6,480. And so if we're looking to buy crash mats, that would buy 2 crash mats for that amount. So what I've been doing in the past couple of years is just supporting smaller schools that have very small budgets, as well as our colonies in some of their purchases. And so it's always just been on a cost-sharing basis. Recommendation number 2, develop a divisional plan for purchases of big-ticket items such as mats, volleyball standards, and weight fitness room equipment, because school supply budgets cannot cover these costs. Three, develop a divisional plan for upgrading outdoor facilities like tracks, soccer nets, etc., because they're necessary for providing safe and engaging phys ed programming. And develop a divisional plan to address a lack of gym space in some schools. So these two kind of go together. Schools that have seen an increase are seeing some real pressures on their gym, doubling up and having a hard time having all the kids there, and so they're bringing them outside, and that's great, especially when the weather is good. But if we don't have great fields for them to play on, it's not a great place for them to be playing. And so we really don't have a plan to address our divisional fields outside. 5, conduct an extracurricular sports program review to answer questions and concerns regarding the funding for participation. So even though this area wasn't part of the scope of this review, it was pretty clear from feedback from phys ed teachers and administrators that this was something they wanted to talk about, and they wanted to provide feedback. Even though there was not one question that was directly related to this, it kept coming out. And so I think it's pretty clear that we need to dig a little bit deeper into what some of those concerns are. And sort of related to that as well, the last recommendation is increase the per team funding available from the division for teams that qualify for provincials and provincial qualifiers. Now, a couple things there. So I think Kathy had mentioned at some point, because this is year 4 for me, that it was increased several years ago. Right now it's at $10,000, and so that budget, if we were to average it out, it works out that we're probably cost neutral. This year, for instance, we're $6,000 to the good, because we only had 2 teams that qualified for provincials. Last year, however, we had multiple teams that qualified for provincials in track in Brandon. And so every 4 years, track provincials are in Brandon. The cost, so just to send the bus started in Lac Du Bonnet, and so we had students from Lac Du Bonnet, Whitemouth, Beausejour, and Oakbank. So the bus was $7,100 and the rooms were $3,000. So that's the budget right there. So $10,100 just for track provincials. That happens every 4 years. And so probably the bigger issue with that is what is in our, I'm not sure if this is a policy or a procedure. It's JJIA-R. Kathy, you can speak to that. I'm not sure. It's a procedure. So the maximum amount that any one team can access is as follows. If it's less than 10 athletes, if it's within driving distance, which is under 200 kilometers, they only get $250, which is probably fine. But if it requires an overnight stay, it's $500. If it's more than 10 athletes requiring an overnight stay, it's $1,000. The information I have over the last 3 years, so any volleyball team or basketball team that needs an overnight stay, it's never one night, it's always 2 nights for provincials, and it's a minimum of $1,000 per night. So the last team that qualified for this year, Lac Du Bonnet Senior, so they went to, they stayed at the Russell Inn, and so it ended up being $1,790 that we paid for the hotel, but we didn't pay anything for transportation, because they were supposed to only get $1,000. And so I've kind of been massaging that a little bit over the years. But I would really like to have something in writing that I could back up and say, well, actually, this is what you are entitled to. So if it's later in the year, that was an easier one. But if we would have had 3 teams qualify for provincials in November, December, and then a couple more in January for curling. Curling 2 years ago was in DePaul, and so just for one car to travel was $750. There would have been hardly anything left. So it is just something that I think we need to look at. That is the presentation. Anyone have any questions?
Jody, turn your mic off for a minute. Thanks very much, Jody. We appreciate it. Very good information. Questions for Jody? Okay, so I have some, Jody. So what are other school divisions doing? So my first question is, I don't think that any principals asked the board for phys ed dollars. Am I wrong in that? Two? Okay. So I guess in the 6 years that I've been sitting on this board, I haven't seen a lot of people ask for money. And so there's lots, when I read your report, I was going, that's interesting. Principals haven't come to us, but Jody now, and this is the first time I guess we've had a review, Jody, so maybe that's great that there's voice through you, which is good, but they haven't put a priority on going ahead and asking for money. We did ask Trevor to provide us a report this year based around kind of high school hockey and high school football and cost that we charge, because somebody playing basketball isn't paying any money. Somebody that's playing hockey is paying money, and I think you've addressed that certainly in here as to what to go ahead and take a look at. And as hockey kids and go to tournaments, there's no money that's coming from somewhere about going ahead and doing that. But that's I think it's another thing that you've looked to address certainly through here. So that's good. I think that this is informative for people that haven't seen with regard to phys ed supplies and money for uniforms, and you're the one that's allocating that out to the schools. Kudos to you for doing that. So I guess my question is that's interesting that the voice through you is, hey, we want to look for some more money, but as they're coming to us, for the most part, it's not that. But that's why we asked you to do this. So of your recommendations, I guess, that you've listed here, what's a home run for you?
First off, I'm not as scary as you guys are. That's why they're able to tell me that, because they're way too intimidating. I think the easiest home run or a single, like a single up the middle, easy one, is the increase in the per team funding without even touching the $10,000 that is allocated in provincials. We need to be able to give them a little bit more. So every school, anytime kids are qualifying for provincials, I think parents know that they're going to have to pay some, especially if they're traveling a long way. And I've taken it upon myself to have some leniency already without permission, and so asking for forgiveness after. But I think it would be nice just to have that in writing, that we can have that increased. See where that goes, and then maybe 10,000 isn't enough. It surely isn't enough on that 4-year rotation. So in 3 years, it probably won't be enough if we're sending a chunk of kids to Brandon for track and field, but we can cross that bridge. I might not be here in 3 years, so we'll see. Might be somebody else asking that question. The other one, the one that will make all administrators happy would be knowing that there's an increase in their phys ed budget lines, that they were actually heard. However, I think in terms of bigger dollars, they're not able to plan. It's hard for a lot of schools to plan for the big ticket items, a plan for that. And so some sort of plan to address the big ones.
Thanks, Jody. Anybody have questions for Jody? Trustee Boyton?
Not really a question. I really appreciate this information, and just in defense of our administrators and schools, when we ask for budget, considerations, of course, they just say, like, don't cut my staff and don't take away our school-based decision-making dollars. So those are their big priorities, and kudos to them, because that's what we do here. We educate. So I guess phys ed isn't as important to them, but it's still important. So thanks for this information, and I think it's something we really have to look at.
Trustee Boyton, I'm glad you brought up school-based decision dollars. I'm glad you brought that up, because that is exactly what that's there for, right? Yeah. So the only other question that I have for you, Jody, is, so we have a volleyball team that practices for 12 weeks and goes through a season and gets to go to provincials, and we have a track and field team that doesn't have the chance to, I guess, practice for that long. Maybe they go to a meet and get to go to the provincials. Talk about apples to apples.
Just in terms of time that they've put in. I mean, track and field is one of those ones where it is a really quick turnaround. Like this year, I don't know how often kids were able to practice outside. It's been just an awful spring. So yeah, they do, you know, they would need to qualify at zones, and it isn't easy to qualify. It's just going to be dependent on what event. I just think it's important that the kids that do qualify, that they get to go to provincials, that it is something that they've earned, and you know, we should make sure that we're ensuring that happens.
Thanks, Jody. Don?
Actually, it's not addressed to Jody, but to Paul. You're obviously not a track and field person. When I was teaching track and field person, we would start practicing at Christmas time inside. I agree that we can't practice outside. Starting from December, we would practice. Would be, if my math is right, it's nearly 18 weeks or so inside.
I'm great if that's going on, if that is going on. But anyways, let's get off of that. That's good. That's where it is. Anything else from Jody? Sorry, Trustee Rowland.
Just wondering about like the difference in needs from, say, our lower grade schools and our high schools. Our high school students don't have in-class participation for a majority of their phys ed time, and so as far as equipment's going, I think you're referring to maybe the provincials, like access to provincials. Have you more data or research on that to see what we really got to do?
Interesting. So the stat I gave about the basketballs, that's just for our high schools, and that's for any of the provincial qualifiers or in provincials, that they would have to use that basketball. So obviously they want to be practicing with that basketball. There's a difference, but so there's a couple different ways that we're delivering our high school phys ed programming, and it all depends really on the schools. And so if I go to, it is on the, it's at the front. Should be under phys ed schedule. So if we look at our grade 9 and 10s, one of our schools has 50% active, 50% health, and then 3 schools have 70% active where they're in the gym and 30% health. And our grade 11 and 12 are kind of all over the place, and so one school has 100% in the gym. 2 schools have 50-50, so 50 in, 50 out, and then one of our schools has a choice where schools can choose 50 in and 50 out. That change happened about 10 years ago, where their phys ed credits became mandatory to graduate, but yet there was a lot of different ways that schools interpreted that. There's a new phys ed curriculum that was supposed to be out actually this spring for piloting next fall. Hasn't come out yet, but I anticipate that will earlier in the fall. But to answer the question in terms of use of equipment, earlier students and mid-year students probably use equipment more frequently, but the intensity of use from high school students, even though they're not always playing in the gym, there's intramurals, and then there's practice, and so the wear and tear on equipment from just the intensity of the sport is more as the children get older. Pardon me?
No savings.
Not really, no. Yeah.
Jody, can you quickly explain, you talked about high school, 50% in, 50% out. I'm not so sure that everybody's understanding.
Yep. So when the province mandated that grade 11 and 12 both needed a credit to graduate, I think school division said, you're crazy, we can't do this, there's not enough gym time, we don't have enough phys ed teachers, and so then it was, there was options to have students actually use some of their physical activity outside of the school that would count for their time. And so for one credit, it's 110 hours that they have to demonstrate. So most often it's 50-50, so 55 hours would be in one semester in the gym, and another 55 hours would be they are actually turning in time that they're playing sports, organizing things to their phys ed teachers. Sometimes it's to a principal, sometimes it's just a parent signing off. It's a little bit different everywhere. It's pretty loose. I think the province has realized that, and they really want to make it a little more black and white, and actually allow kids to do things that never would have been seen as physical activity. And people are going to say, you're crazy to say this, but snowmobiling is one of the ones that actually could be. So if you've ever ridden a snowmobile for a couple hours, you're drenched when you're done. And so absolutely, it should. Yep, yep.
Jody, can you also, so vacuuming at home is an activity
So
that...
it can be, yeah. It's all going to be dependent on the schools, and so you can see why there's been, there was an uproar, and there needs to be something a little bit more black and white. I never thought about the vacuuming one, Paul. That's a good one.
Anyone else? Questions for Jody? Jody, thanks for coming out, doing this. We'd love to hear back from you, certainly, you know, how we're doing with some of the recommendations and how some of the things are going next year. But we appreciate your time. And Jody, you're one of the staff members that we don't get to say thank you for the work that you go ahead and do at the division level, and we've got an opportunity to say thank you now, and thanks for going out and supporting schools and supporting administrators, certainly with some of the experience and expertise that you have, so we appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to move on to talent development review update. Is this you, Lars? Okay.
So I've taken the recommendations from the review last year and just given a little update of where things are at. The first one was in the area of governance. So there was recognition. Yeah, the light is not on. Can you hear me okay? The first one was recognition that not all schools have access to talent development staffing. So there was an equity issue, but that would have to be addressed through a budget decision. So that remains something that can be addressed and perhaps can be addressed in the next budget. Plan to develop the planned talent development art speak activities based on student input, interest, and passions and skills, because there were some questions about how the decisions were made for what activities took place. So there has been work done this year at the schools. We will consider that for review when we meet in our first meeting in the fall. Item number 3, to hold biannual divisional meetings to address some things in talent development. We did do a good focus on that last year, but honestly that has not been well done this year. I'd have to own responsibility for that and certainly ensure that dates are set in the calendar for September, because it did not get the attention that it should have had in that area. Doing an annual program review with the school administrators, because it was identified that there was a lot of difference in understanding of what talent development was for or what it might do in the schools. That has been addressed through school visits that I have done as part of the student services school visits, and can continue to be addressed through those visits as part of my plans annually. Enhance art access to art speak sessions by considering different locations and durations of the sessions. So we had the usual 4 Camp Cedarwood sessions that have traditionally taken place, and there were workshops at Masqua, St. George, Pine Ridge Hollow. There was one, I believe, scheduled for another location that had to be canceled, so that was done. And there was a middle years session done here at the Education Center as well. So that will be an additional topic to address in the fall in terms of participation, observations of how that went, to see if that was successful. Considering the budget for Art Speak that reflects the needs for the program, so there's a supply budget there that I checked on yesterday that is underspent, that there's lots of opportunity to use. It's not a question of is there enough money. It appears to be well resourced in terms of the budget. It might be one of those budget items that we have to look at. It's like this ends up getting used in general revenue, so perhaps having a budget that actually reflects what is actually needed. It'd be good to look at that after this year, now that we've tried some different locations and see how that's affected some budget, to look at adjusting that budget line so it's well resourced, but then not over budget and end up just going into general revenue. And then ensuring that schools appropriately promote and select candidates for Art Speak sessions, because there were some concerns about who the best candidates were and what schools were trying to achieve. So again, that is going to be addressed in the fall throughout our times next year. So that is the update from the recommendations from the model. From the review, one thing that wasn't part of the official recommendations was reporting on school activities that have taken place, and I see in our agenda today there is an inclusion of a whole list of activities that schools have been undertaking. So even though that wasn't an official recommendation, that is an additional piece that came out of the review.
Thanks, Lars. Anything for Lars? Trustee Boyton?
Just a question, where did you gather the information from? Like, who participated in providing it? Was it the administrators or staff, or to come up with the recommendations?
The recommendations listed here came from staff interviews, from our talent development teacher meetings and administrators. I don't recall offhand that there was a student survey. I do believe there was some information gathered by student participants in talent development activities, but I don't recall it being a broad student survey.
Anyone else for? So my question for you, maybe it's not tonight, my question is talent development working? So what I'd like to find out from you, from your opinion and what you're getting from, is it working and how? So I'm not ever thinking that we shouldn't continue it, but I really don't know if it's working. So you've given us some ideas, but when I'm going to choose math, if we're doing, we're increasing our scores in math, for the most part, then our math, I can see, we're being successful. Are we being successful with talent development? I don't know. And so I think eventually what I want from you is talent development working? And I'm not asking you, it's unfair to, I don't want you to answer that question now, but that's what I would want to know.
I would go back to the review. I don't recall the specific, I think there was a response to that generally in the review, but the comparison to math is kind of appropriate because math is easy to measure. We would have to decide what are we looking for to determine that it's working. I could answer that specifically. Yeah.
Anyone else? Trustee Nicol?
I'm not quite sure the question you asked is my idea of talent development. My idea of talent development is not to develop necessarily math, or it's a talent that maybe a person is good in or is really interested in robots. That's not something that we teach in school, but it's a talent, so they have a course on robots or robotics. And I don't know how you can ever evaluate whether it was successful or not. So my idea, I don't believe that in my idea, what my idea of talent development is, I don't think it could be accessed to whether it's effective or not.
So Don, the only thing that I would say is that if we happen to have a robot presentation or a club or whatever, you know what? My student engagement, are kids really engaged and they're so excited about being there? What's our attendance like? Those kind of things. Those are some of the things that you can measure to find out whether a program is well, I guess I'm worried that the word I'm using is successful. I got to be careful about how you measure it, but what's the engagement like as to where it is? In talent development, what is our engagement like in talent development, much like in ArtSpeak? We can measure a little bit of ArtSpeak from the presentations and from seeing the kids and from listening to parents. When we go to those presentations, we see that kind of stuff. So that kind of helps us a little bit with ArtSpeak. But with talent development, anyways, it's something to think about. Thanks, Lars. Anyone else? Okay. Grade 3-4 assessment. You, Jeff?
So the report there that you've been provided with is actually quite a lengthy one. It looks at the data across, sort of many sectors, numeracy and literacy in both our French immersion and our English programs. And I'm not going to walk through each of the individual graphs, but just to give you an example of one, really, the assessments themselves ask teachers to classify students in one of 4 categories, whether or not they're meeting grade level expectations, whether or not they're approaching grade level expectations, whether or not they need ongoing help to meet those expectations, or whether they're low enough that they're just out of range of the expectations. And so really what we're looking at is we're looking at particularly the students at each of the grade levels that are meeting expectations. And also keeping an eye on those that are approaching expectations when we're looking for the measurement of how many students are close to meeting those grade level expectations. So like I say, without going through the graphs, sort of one at a time, I can sort of sum it up to you for you in 5 areas. 5 areas. Both are in our English program, in both the reading, literacy, and the numeracy areas. Our students across our schools on average are above the provincial average and showing growth over the last 3 or 4 years. So the gap between where our students are at and the provincial average continues to increase. So that's good news. When we look at the French immersion program, when we look at reading in English, our students are slightly above the provincial average and they're showing a little bit of improvement. But the gap between the provincial average and where our students are is a bit smaller, but they are, sort of exceeding that provincial average. However, in both the French immersion numeracy and French immersion reading in French, it's a curiosity that our students are below the provincial average and are either not showing improvement or only showing improvement in some areas. And not sure what would be going on with that. So in terms of just an action item, we are bringing into the division office next year in the division principal role, Mr. Gasperti, who has an extensive background in the French immersion programming. And one of the things I've already flagged for him is we'll be sitting down with this data so he can look at it on sort of a school-by-school basis and start digging into why that may be. It may be an actual accurate reflection of student achievement, or there's the possibility that it's equally as likely that it's teacher understanding of the assessment and how they view grade level expectations. We don't know which one that is at that time, but Mr. Gasperti coming into the divisional role is certainly, I think, the right person to be looking at that. Just another comment I would just like to make is, we do have the data divisionally, but we also have it by school. And I was able to spend a little bit of time going through it school by school. And we do have one school that I probably need to follow up with myself, just in terms of their plans and in terms of where their students are at in terms of meeting grade level expectations. And so that'll be work for the fall. for me to do. So the two takeaways in terms of action items, myself working with one of our schools, and then Mr. Gasperti working with all of our French immersion schools.
Thanks, Trev. Any questions? So that's kind of what I'm looking for. I'm kind of looking for is that if we're not doing as well as we think we should be doing, what's the plan? And I think that you're talking about, we're using Chris to help us in that kind of a situation. And the other thing is, as what Kathy's done, is that, okay, here's one of the schools where we need to go ahead and do some work. So you're particularly talking about one of those schools and you're going to go ahead and spend some time to try to find out that individual data to go from there. That's exactly what I would want to be looking for with regard to this assessment data as to where we are. Anyone else? Okay, let's move on. Student engagement and activity report.
So this is a report that the board has seen 3 times so far this year. It's all the great things that are going on in our schools. We've updated it one more time as of June 18th, and so anything on the report that's in blue is the additions from the last time the board saw the report on April the 16th.
Any comments or questions? This is exactly what we asked for. Right? Anything? Sorry, Lars?
While not quantitative, this might be a measure of engagement. We don't know how engaged the kids are, but the number of things that schools are doing, I think they generally would not do these things if students weren't engaged. So this is a measure of, I could take this as, wow, talent development is a part of this. It's not teased out, but hey, schools are doing some awesome things for kids.
Very well said. I agree with you 100%. Lots of activities. Lots of activities for lots of kids to get involved. And obviously, we're not doing a band trip in grade 7 and 8 at one of the schools if the kids aren't interested in going on a band trip, right? Yeah, perfect. Anyone else? But thank you. That's exactly what we looked for, and part of it was to get a range of what schools were doing. Early childhood readiness report. I'll learn how to read.
Thanks, Paul. So the report itself talks about the mechanics of, a divisional employee, one of our speech language pathologists, working with our students before they come into kindergarten to do an assessment to see, to gauge their readiness for kindergarten. In the middle of the report, there's some data there, and you can see that our numbers of students that were assessed this year is very similar to the students in previous years. The key takeaway for understanding of what goes on, with this and why it's so important is the incredible value of the information that is learned through the assessments for our schools as they prepare to do kindergarten intake of students. And so what the assessment does, it allows us to flag students that maybe require some extra support, either to, sort of get them closer to where we would hope they would be when they enter kindergarten, and that's the role of the speech-language pathologist working with the students and families before they enter. But the other thing that this does is it really identifies those students that have some significant needs that are going to need extra supports when they enter kindergarten in September. And because we now know who those students are and have identified that, our schools start working on intake plans with those students as early as February and March. And they're doing intake and they're planning for students and they're planning with families. They're making requests to the division for extra supports that they would need. And what we found is since we've begun this process, the transition into kindergarten for our students who require the most support has become much, much more seamless, very efficient. And all of our schools that participate in this, which is all of our schools, have just resoundingly noticed that and have articulated that getting to know their students with the greatest amount of need before they enter and being able to plan for them is just completely invaluable. So.
Thanks, Trev. Comments from anyone? Trustee Rowan?
I see on the report it said this is an initiative that was created in fall 2021, but Is this different than the initiative that was going on like 20 years, 15 years ago when my kids all were assessed before kindergarten and going through these processes and utilized speech language therapy? Or like, did we have a break and came back? Because this has been a real gem for our division for many years, I thought.
I can speak to my understanding of that, but then maybe I'll ask Lars to weigh in just in case I've got it wrong. We used to do what was called the 3- and 4-year-old readiness fairs, and we would gain some data from that, and that was a little bit more of a voluntary process where it was received differently in different communities in terms of the number of families that participated. And so, yeah, we did get good information, from that. And then we did switch in, I guess it was 2021, to the EYE Early Years Evaluation DA, Direct Assessment, EYE DA. And I would just say it's a little bit more intensive, not for the children or families participating, but in the quality of information that we get from it. And so that was the switch that was made. And I don't know if, Lars, if that's accurate from your history in the division, or?
Yeah, there's one other piece that still exists, but in terms of the transition planning, there was the Children's Therapy Initiative. It's been renamed. It doesn't come to me at the moment, but it's a shared service in Manitoba where identified students receive speech and language occupational therapy support. We never got that information in a really timely way to do transition planning. There's some legislated timelines where you should, and we were never able to meet those timelines. And it still only captured some students. So this captures students way earlier, it captures way more students, and our transition planning is way earlier and much better. The CTI piece is the only thing that was missing from that. The Children's Therapy Initiative is sort of like it's a shared service program in Manitoba where they have regions, and when kids are identified through their doctor, they could get entitled to services if they so choose to get speech and language services, occupational therapy services, preschool. But not all parents go to the doctor, and there's big waiting lists. It's very cumbersome to manage. We found this process to be far more efficient and capture more kids.
Anything else? Trustee Harris?
In that, what we're seeing right now in that table, it talks about percentages assessed at 84, 91, and 89%. Are you hoping for 100%? And if so, what's required to make that happen?
Yeah, 100% would definitely be the ideal number. So that comes from, we received in this year, year 3, 283 students registered for kindergarten. Only 253 of the students' families volunteered to participate in the assessment. And so the other 30 families just said, no, thank you, this opportunity isn't for us right now, and we don't want to participate. And so
I didn't expect that answer. I thought it was going to be we needed an extra staff member to complete those other. Interesting. The parents have decided not to participate. Wow.
I would almost tell you that we maybe need an extra staff member to go knocking on those doors and have those conversations with the parents to, I won't say convince them, but to talk to them about the benefits of doing that so their kids can be prepared for school. When we don't get those children, it all of a sudden, boom, oh, Johnny doesn't know how to do this, or this, and that's an issue for us. When we can see it ahead of time coming, that's good. Trustee Smith?
Actually, I have, my nephew is 3, and I actually had to convince my friend to sign up for preschool. He's not speaking yet. So I had to convince her to put him into preschool to get him assessed and have him start speaking, and she doesn't want him to go yet. It's her baby, and I'm trying to convince her, so she doesn't want him to go yet. It's her baby, but I think a lot of parents don't want the baby to leave the nest yet. So I think some people don't want to let their kids go, but she's sending him to preschool, and I think that some parents are like that. So I think that's what some parents are, holding their kids back. So yeah, I can see some parents doing that.
Thanks, Trustee Smith. Anything else for Trevor and Lars? Thanks for that information, guys. Thanks. 8.6. So Trustee Boyton gave me a shout and talked to me about cell phone use in classrooms discussion. So did you want to start with this, or?
Probably not tonight, because we have a lot of things to still cover. I just wanted to highlight it, and I think Trustee Dent also probably forwarded you some information about that too. So we were both, I guess, obviously on the same page. But I do think that we should be having some discussion about this at some point, but we can delay it. I think we could use some information to find out maybe what policies are out there and maybe what we should be looking at, just to start gathering some stuff.
Yeah, what I was going to offer to the conversation is, we know that 6 provinces now across Canada, BC, Alberta, Ontario, Quebec, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, have province-wide policies to look at this. 3 of them, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, quite recent, and Alberta actually just this week was added to the list. So we see a trend right across the country moving in this direction. DSFM here in Manitoba, as well as Hanover School Division, have also gone in a direction of having some sort of policy put in place. And I'd be happy to pull together those and bring a report back to the board for the August meeting, just in terms of what these look like and just for your consideration and conversation. So.
Go ahead, Dustin.
Yeah, so this has been a little bit of an area. I'm having Dawn's issue. I think you guys want me to sit outside, maybe? This is what I'm reading into this. So I too did a little bit of a deeper dive and saw what Trevor had seen. So I did go through procedure JICJ, so which is our divisional procedure for responsible use of technology by students. And then I approached our leadership for the 4 schools where my ratepayers go to, which is OBE, SMS, SCI, and École Dougal. And a little bit to my surprise, but in a positive way, was that they found that the procedure was effective and that they were using it with no issue. I had received a little bit of conversation from some parents, but nobody with necessarily problems about it, like no personal experience with it, but just overall concerns for both student safety and then also I had a couple of parents suggest that even the phones being in the classrooms, just being present would be distractive for them. So that was a little bit curious to me, but again, we have still a lot to go through our agenda tonight, but that was some of the feedback that I had received.
So Trevor and I talked a little bit, and we thought about the fact is that ask Trevor to bring some information to us. We'll get it ahead of time of the meeting in August, and then have a discussion with it in August as to where it is. And let's find out if the province, if it's out of our hands anyways, as to where we are. But I think that's kind of if we're okay with that, we're going to head down that road. Okay. The draft reporting schedule. So we talked about this. We asked Trevor to give us a draft of it. You've seen the draft. Trevor has come forward with 2 for 24-25 reviews of student services and extracurricular sports. And that's what he's bringing forward to us that you have in the package. If it's something that we want to go ahead and do different, we said we would talk about it now. I can leave it open to anybody. If those are Trevor's suggestions, if there's something different that we would like to see, let's talk about it. Otherwise, we'll move forward and we'll pass this motion. Anyone? Oh, okay. Yep.
Just on the board report, it says reading recovery. We could probably have that removed.
So I had flagged that, and I was going to speak to that. I didn't know Paul was going to take it for the point of efficiency, but when I was reviewing the materials this morning, I noticed reading recovery was still there. We'll need to switch that to early literacy intervention report, and so same focus but different title because of the program change.
So I'm going to call it the motion. Be it resolved that the board adopt the 24-25 board reports document as their schedule for regular reports presented to the board throughout the 24-25 school year, and be it further resolved that the schedule remains open to changes by the board or the superintendent, but provides a proactive structure of targeted items for the superintendent to prepare throughout the course of the year. Need a mover and a seconder. Wow, that was a pretty good one. Moved by trustee Smith, seconded by trustee Nickel. Any conversations to this? Okay, hearing none, we'll vote. And it passed 9-0. Thanks, Trev. So you've got your plan. And Kath, thanks for setting up that plan. Certainly, as you've been doing that, and you know what, it's been a good one for us. So thanks. So 8.8 is the indemnity bylaw. It's our third reading. Be it resolved the board approve the third reading of the indemnity bylaw 379-24. Need a mover and a seconder. Moved by trustee Boyton, seconded by trustee Rowland. Any questions on the indemnity bylaw? Okay, hearing none, we'll vote. Passed 9-0. Thank you. Gillis School Sleepover. So be it resolved that the board approve in principle the Gillis School Sleepover for June 26th and 27th, subject to superintendent's final approval. Need a mover and a seconder. Moved by trustee Harris, seconded by trustee Smith. Are you going to second this? There we go. Perfect. Any questions of this? Okay, hearing none, we'll vote. Passed 9-0. Thank you. So committee reports. Policy committee, trustee Nickel, anything that you want from your policy committee?
I made the last report last meeting.
Perfect. Thank you for the hard work. Finance committee, trustee Boyton.
No, our next meeting is tomorrow, so.
Perfect. So 8:15 is the Education Foundation Committee. The last meeting was on June the 7th. You have minutes that are there. Jody, is there anything that you want to add to that, or any questions for Jody or anybody on the committee? Don't ask me a question. I'm on the committee. I didn't go to the meeting.
I'll just quickly update. We did discuss final revisions to the procedures and executive summary. We had wonderful feedback from trustee Boyton. Most of us took a look and tried to consider how to interpret and make the procedures more user-friendly, reader-friendly. So there were some adjustments to the final version that's been presented tonight. And that's what really the minutes are, is just us working on the procedures.
So people have a chance to look at it. I'm going to call that we have a motion on 8:17. Be it resolved the board accept the recommendations from the Sunrise Education Foundations Committee to adopt the Sunrise Education Foundation procedures and executive summary. I need a move and a seconder. Moved by trustee Nickel, seconded by trustee Dent. Any questions to it? Trustee Boyton.
There were just a couple areas in the draft that also would relate to elected as opposed to appointed. And I think just to be consistent with those areas, I think they are all elected. None of them should be appointed. It refers to members on the committee and things like that. So it's just we can get that wording tightened up. I don't know how you feel about that, Jody.
So we had a lot of discussion around if it's appointed or an elected. So the discussion was the board of trustees are elected. The board, through our process though, we may elect people to the committee, but that is the form on how we appoint members to the committee. So we appoint people to the committee through an election process, but the committee is still appointed by the board. That was the general discussion and final conclusion. So the discussion and what will be presented in the procedures is the committee will be appointed, and the form of how we appoint those members could be through an election that we do, we could change our organizational bylaw and appoint different members differently rather than an election process. So that's why the word appointed remained in the, or should be consistent through the procedures. I recognize there were some spots where it said elected, but the process we discussed and all agreed to keep it as appointed.
So is the Education Foundation Committee not made up at our meeting in September when we have all our other committees structured?
Yes, I believe so. The Education Foundation Committee is something that it's not something that, go ahead.
I feel like you have 3 people who are appointed, so your chair, your superintendent, and your secretary treasurer are part of they are appointed. And you are appointing 2 other members through a process of voting, but all 5 of those people are being appointed to that committee. And I think that's probably some of that difference making, because 3 people are actually appointed.
So thanks for clarifying. We still are going to vote on 2 people, and then as we vote, we're appointing them to the committee of 5. But the chair, the superintendent, and the secretary treasurer are appointed on that committee. The other 2 positions are elected. Then we appoint them to that committee of 5.
Right, but before they can be appointed, they're elected, right? So that's why I'm thinking, like, they're not just appointed. They're always, and even the chair is elected as chair, right? So that person is still elected first. But it's not that position that, I was referring to. It was like, members will be elected, but it says members will be appointed. But they really aren't. All members for committees are elected, and we vote on them. We don't just appoint them.
All members are elected, yes. And we've got language in there, as we elect them, we appoint them to the committee. Yes, I hear you. Don?
The reason why we have to use appointed because of our trust. The trust says these people are appointed, so we cannot do a procedure different from the trust because that is a legal document. So we cannot change the legal document. So we have to use the word appointed. And just like Jody said, how we get them appointed, we don't have to elect them. We can pick people out of the hat. That could be a method of deciding who is going to be appointed. And if no one's interested and only 2 people put up their hand, we don't have an election. So, but we still appoint them. And the main thing is that we've got to follow the trust. The trust is a legal document. I know we talked a lot about it in which word to use, and that's what we meant to. That it was a legal document. We should follow what the legal document.
However, you're right, but it's the group of 9 that is always going to, if only one person puts their hand up to want to go ahead and do it, you know what, the group of 9 then tries to figure out how we're gonna get 3 people that are on there. It's always going to be, there might only be 3, and that's whether we're going to call it an election or just get those appointed, but the group of 9 is still going to make those decisions. Remember, it always goes back to the group of 9. Let's just always be clear on that part as to where we are. But good point on that. Okay, so I guess we're going now to, oh, sorry, we got a vote. Thank you. Any other questions? Hearing none, we'll vote. Sarah was just about to tell me that anyway, so it passed 9-0. Thank you for that. She was just being polite, like slow Paul as to where it is. So we have the ad hoc committee, and I'm going to turn this over to our chair, Trustee Rowan. You've been busy.
Yes, the ad hoc committee has been very busy. I'd like to start by thanking all the members of the ad hoc committee. With their help as a committee, we've managed to complete all of the recommendations from the February 20th, 2024 meeting. A new school has been placed at the top of the Sunrise School Division's 5-year capital plan. We've had an opportunity to meet with the former Minister of Education and current education critic Wayne Owasco as part of our meeting with other local MLAs, Ron Schuler and Bob Lagasse. We met with the current Minister of Education, Nello Altemer, and Deputy Minister of Education, Brian O'Leary. Most recently, we met with River East Transcona School Division Superintendent Sandra Herbst and their board chair, Colleen Carswell. At each of these meetings, we had an opportunity to advocate for the needs of Sunrise School Division and received constructive information for moving forward. Please note that the minutes from each of these meetings is now on ESB and can be found under the June 4th meeting and tonight's board meeting. At this time, the Ad Hoc Land Planning Committee would like to bring forward new recommendations. We would like to extend the timeline for the current committee to June 17th, 2025. This way we can complete the following recommendations. We would like to write a formal request to our MLAs on behalf of the board, asking them to review the Planning Act, Section 136, subsection 1, to consider rewording, making it a requirement for RMs to collect the 10% assessed value for all subdivisions. This is something we've advocated for at both of our meetings with provincially elected officials. We would like to identify stakeholder groups, such as councils in the area, the rec department, etc. We would also like to start meeting with these groups to identify potential partnership opportunities. It should be noted that we are not at a stage yet where we feel we are ready to be consulting with the public. If and when we get to that point, the committee will come back to the board for further approval. We would like to write a letter to all Springfield area developers letting them know about how the growth within the community is impacting our schools. This growth may require an additional school. As such, we may be looking for land in the future, and we would welcome them to reach out to us if they'd like to have further discussions. Finally, we would like to have the Secretary-Treasurer contact Gordon Damon, President of the Red River Group, to investigate the costs associated with a board presentation on the process for creating a project like the Niverville Community Center project. At this point, I'd like to open the floor to any questions that the board may have.
Go ahead, Don.
There's two recommendations I would like for the clarification on that. First of all, why did you pick Red River Group instead of getting it open to a tender if you're going to investigate the cost? Because now you're only getting one company asking you what it's going to cost instead of a number of companies, which we usually do.
We put the recommendation as Gordon Damon as it was something that was recommended to us by the MLAs when we met with them.
I'm also,
and the other question is,
I can further speak to it. With the Niverville Community Center project, Gordon Damon was a major advocate for the project, so he was involved on that specific project. So when it came to bringing in multi-level government, local, federal, and provincial, he was involved and was part of the steering committee. So he can give the level of insight of what government grants he's applied for and what stakeholders. So it was more of an insight on that specific project that he was involved in, rather than going out and getting an RFP or a quote with other entities. He was a driving force on this project, so he would give us the insight on said project.
And the next one, about dealing to the MLAs on behalf of the board. Actually, I'll just tell you, I spent maybe 2 hours this morning this afternoon talking to government officials to find out what the protocol is. And one of the things I found out was there is no protocol. So, but I did ask a number of them, what is the best way to if you want to change the act, who's the best person? What should you do? Should be talking to the Premier first? Who should be talking to? But what I found out is that there's no point in talking to the MLAs, because it's not the MLAs that's going to change the law. It's going to be the minister that's going to change the law, which is, in this case, is the name. Lisa Naylor and Ian Bushy are the two people that they suggested that we contact, because the other MLAs, this is what I was kind of told. If the other MLAs, they get the letter, they're just going to file it and they're not going to do anything with it. But if you send a letter to Lisa and Ian, they're the ones that are probably responsible for the Land Planning Act. So I'd rather have, if we want to be successful, I'd rather have it sent to those people that are going to have a chance of changing it. Because if you send it to anybody else, they're not going to change it because they're just going to send it back to these two people anyway. And although they did suggest, I wanted to know what's the easiest way to do, they did suggest that if you write a letter to these two people, that you copy the Premier, the Minister of Education, and our local MLA. So I would like to have that recommendation in place so they.
Don, what you're asking for is the committee has said write a formal letter, request to our MLA. So what you're asking for is, would she consider to say, write a letter to the two ministers, the Premier, and to our MLAs on behalf of the board? You would want to add those other groups to that?
When you run into the other group, that's because the Premier is the MLA. All these people are MLAs. But if you get a letter addressed to those two ministers that are responsible for the Land Planning Act, then you get more action than if you just send a mass letter to everybody, but everybody say, well, I'm not in charge of that anyway, so I'm not going to do anything with it. And just one person suggests that you might do that after they have decided to change it, start doing the bill. You might start then lobbying the MLAs to change it. But now they said that the best way to get some action is to write to the people that are in charge of it. But as a matter of courtesy, you should copy the Premier, the Minister of Education, and our local MLA. And but I'm not quite sure what he meant by local MLA. Is it really Wayne Wasco, or is it the other three or two? The other three that's involved, two. Okay, so there'd be three altogether. So I would expect that that person would, because I said I was from White Mills, so they just knew that it was Wayne was the MLA, not realizing it was the whole Sunrise Division.
To paraphrase, what you're asking is, instead of you're asking her to, would she consider writing to the two ministers that are for land planning, copy it to the Premier and copy it to the MLAs? Is that something that your committee would be okay doing?
Sorry, the next motion that we have is assigning either the superintendent or designate to prepare a letter to elected officials and the applicable provincial departments recommending the Planning Act to be amended. So the applicable departments could be the municipal affairs and education.
Don?
Yeah, that's the other, if this is the recommendation and we're going to pass the other motion, the recommendation and the motion doesn't jive. That's what I'm saying, is that we have the recommendation, then we pass a motion that is against the recommendation. So I'd rather either take out A completely and just pass a motion that we said ask the superintendent to do that, rather than have two things in there. It looks like we don't know what we're doing, because here's the recommendation, then we pass this motion that is in direct opposition to what we recommended.
Okay, somebody's got to help me, because I'm lost. Go ahead, Diane.
Can we just pass the recommendation motion with an amendment to include the department, Lisa Naylor, which is infrastructure, and Ian Bushy, which would be, I'm not sure his department name, just amend our recommendation on that particular motion and leave the second one as is? Would that be acceptable if we made an amendment to include those departments?
That would be acceptable to me, yeah. And Don, just to answer your question as far as why we were looking on sending it to our MLAs, is because the three of them had asked us to put a formal request in writing to send it to them before they would advocate for us.
Okay, so we have a motion in our, on 8.21, and it talks about, be it resolved, the board approve and direct the superintendent and/or designate to prepare a letter to the elected officials and applicable provincial departments recommending the Planning Act, Section 136.1, to be amended. That's fine, and it meets kind of, Dawn, is what you're talking about.
There's a motion before that.
So number 20 says, be it resolved that the board approve the continuation of the ad hoc planning committee to allow them to complete the 4 recommendations as amended. Can we put down there as amended?
Yeah.
Because you've all agreed to that it's amended. So we'll put down as amended and identified in the June 18th report. Are we good with that? To the 4, Dustin and Diane and Lorraine and Melissa?
We could say as amended to reflect the motion, and we put a motion number, and then we can leave it as well, it's going to be resolved that the board approves. That's going to be a motion. Right?
So we're going to say, be it resolved that the board approve the continuation of the ad hoc planning committee until June 17th, 2025. So that's asking for them to continue, to allow time to complete the 4 recommendations as amended and identified in the June 18th, 2024 report. Because the report does, we are amending the recommendation. And then we're going on to say, be it resolved, we have 2 motions to pass. The first motion does need to say that we are changing Part A to include, the amendment that we've got is to include the 2 ministers involved. That's what Don's talking about. So as amended, that's all we have to put in there. Are we good with that? Okay. So be it resolved that the board approve the continuation of the ad hoc land planning committee until June 17th to allow time to complete the 4 recommendations as amended and identified in the June 18th, 2024 report. Moved by Trustee Rowan, seconded by Trustee Dent. You have a question?
Any questions?
No, I don't want to ask any questions. Yes, do you have any questions?
Yes.
Go ahead.
How many meetings do you think are going to be needed in the coming year for this group?
Why? What's your...
I don't know.
Well, I think that we set this committee up because there are 4 local trustees, and their job certainly hasn't finished as to what it is, and they may need to meet a number of times to do it. I'm 10.
Okay.
I'm not sure that we're at a point where we can necessarily identify how many meetings we'll need, because part of our recommendations are to identify the stakeholders and then to start meeting with them. So in not having a list of stakeholders currently, it's difficult to say how many meetings we'll ultimately need.
When you met with the Minister of Education, did he give a timeline as to when a new school might happen here?
We are not a high priority. He did say that if the water treatment plant in Springfield does come to fruition, that at that point he would like to know, and we may move up that list of priorities at that time. But we do still need to figure out what we're going to do with the students that are coming in as we are growing now.
So I find it premature that we're having all these meetings when we're going to be years away, it's to me, from getting a school. I'm wondering why we have to have these meetings now and why we can't wait 3 or 4 or 5 years before trying to get all of this information.
We may end up at a point where we have more students than we can fit into our schools. So we need to be proactive where we are meeting with the RM and having a discussion with them, because we may need their help in housing those students. Because if we get to a point where we can't accommodate our students, then that's going to impact developers. Developers aren't going to want to come somewhere where families are having a hard time getting their kids into schools. So we need to make sure that we're being proactive in that regard and working with the other stakeholders in our area.
So is that what you've just described there? Was that part of our initial mandate of this committee to look at that kind of stuff?
I'll answer that. So I think that the initial mandate is that we looked at assessed the enrollment report that we had, and we were concerned about the enrollment to that it is growing, and are we going to be able to house the students in the current schools in the Oakbank area. Hence then the 4 local trustees got together to start meeting to talk a little bit about what kind of a plan could there be. Whether it's, do our students, can they go to CPET, where our growth is, if we start to have more developers, where we are, because we still are expecting more students that we can handle in the Springfield area. We still are expecting that.
And I agree with that. I still feel I think we've done enough now to let the government know we're going to need a school. We have it as our #1 priority or whatever in the 5-year plan. And I don't think we need to have meetings in the next year or two. That's where I'm coming from. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Lorraine? And I'll come to you, Diane.
I think we have to be proactive. Like, we know these developers are on our back doors. We know that once this, water treatment center comes in, things might go gung-ho. We don't really even know right now, where do we need the school? Do we need it in Springfield? Do we need something in Beausejour? Do we need, I think we need to meet with stakeholders, and I don't even know if it's only as this committee, but maybe it's to start organizing something, and maybe as a board we need to have some community outreach and talk to the developers as a group. We know that there's a whole group of people that are advocating and raising money for a rec center in Oakbank area right now. Can we partner with them, like in the Niverville school? So we have to start those conversations now, because they're going to start a project, and later they may say, well, we didn't know you guys were interested in doing anything. So we have to let them know that we're interested in doing something. Do we have to buy land? Maybe. Where are we buying land? I think we have to know these kind of things so that we can plan for the future. I think we have to start somewhere.
Go to you, Diane.
Yeah, just further what Lorraine's saying, I guess the initiative of this was that developers are looking to set aside 10% of land for future schools, possibly. Some had approached us to wanting to make their plans about including a school. So we are discussing this because we'd like to take advantage of that opportunity to be included in those primary initial plans. And that was our reviews were showing how much land do we need. We're trying to determine what kind of school we need. Plus, in addition, we have a 1-year notice period from CPET on our students that could be sent away. And as Lorraine shared an article, which I couldn't quite open, about River East Transcona school divisions are bursting at the seams. There's a chance that our kids will have to come back, and we have to be prepared for some influx of students. But it's about preparation and working with community and the growth that's going on right now, and utilizing that synergy and finding a place now and not trying to fit a school somewhere down the road. We may not build that school, but we need to plan to have a spot for that school.
Unfortunately, it's 9:27. We need to extend our meeting. So we're almost there, but can we extend our meeting by 15 minutes? Trustee Nicol, are you about this extending our meeting? No, we have to so part of it is you make the motion to extend the meeting? Okay, there we go. Thank you. A half an hour? 30 minutes. I need a seconder. Second by Trustee Boytson. We have to do this by hand? Sarah? We'll do it by hand. Trustee Dent, yes. Rowland, yes. Wilson, yes. Nicol, yes. Smith, yes. Boytson, yes. Rowland, yes. Harris?
Can you make a motion when the motion's on the floor?
Well, we need to. Okay. There, it's passed, 9-0. So now we still have the motion on the floor. Who still want to talk to it? Trustee Nickel?
This is just a suggestion in the future, so. I had when I was reading this, because there was 4 recommendations, I was in favor of a couple of them, but not in favor of the other one, so I was at a dilemma. Which one, am I going to vote no, and am I going to vote yes? So I'm saying that if you give a number of recommendations which are so vastly different, that we split, like I know according to Robert's Rules of Order, we could split the vote. Like we could use the word division, but then we got to go and do everything in the ESB and everything else. So I'm just saying, if there's in the future, can we, if there's too many things to vote for, instead of putting it as one lump sum, have more than one motion?
Okay, anything else on this? So we have the amendment that we made to the motion, and there was about as amended that we talked about. I'm still on 820. Okay, any other questions to this? Okay, hearing none, we'll vote.
You're going to have 10 meetings.
No, you asked for a number of numbers. Well, we've called the question. We've called the question. You got to vote now.
So who's it moved by and seconded? Mine doesn't say. I'm on sync, sorry. I was on sync. I'm fine now. I'm fine now. It said on sync.
So it passed 9-0. Thank you for that. So now we have, be it resolved that the board approve and direct the superintendent or designate to prepare a letter to the elected officials and applicable provincial departments recommending the Planning Act Section 136 to be amended. Mover and a seconder. Moved by Trustee Nichols, seconded by Trustee Rowan. Comments on this? Hearing none, will vote. Thank you for that. So professional development is there, divisional financial summary report is not there, board correspondence you have for information, nice to know information. Thanks, Sarah, for putting that up. Regular board meeting August 27th. Questions from the public. Are there any questions from the public, Jody?
No, but I just wanted to make sure everybody received their capsule access codes and username and passwords. If not, contact Sarah or myself, but no messages or emails from the public.
We have two motions that are from in camera, and are we going to have other motions that are from in camera as we go back in? So can we go ahead and do number 17 because we're not going to have other motions from there? Okay, thank you. Be it resolved, the board offer the position of the Heartland School Principal effective September the 3rd as recommended by the superintendent. Need a mover and a second. A move by Trustee Boyson, second by Trustee Smith. Any questions? Hearing none, will vote. And it passed 9-0. Be it resolved that the board approve the chair and the superintendent to reply to the May 21st in-camera parent delegation as discussed. Need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Trustee Nichols, seconded by Trustee Rowan. Questions? Hearing none, will vote. So we're going to go back into in-camera. Thank you for that. Yeah, I don't think there's any motions coming out of in-camera. Don't hold me to the... But we'll go from there. And we're going to go back to Trustee Harris. Oh, yeah, but we're not done. Oh, we are. We haven't, no, we're not. No,
He didn't adjourn.
I haven't adjourned. No, we haven't adjourned our meeting. No, there's no motions coming out of in-camera. And we're going to come... Yes, yes. Okay. All right.
We need the door closed? Need the door closed, please?
So we come back in August the 27th, but you're the city Rowan and trustee Harris. We good with that? And then we'll come back on the 27th with certainly with the entire board, together with a plan. Okay? So before we adjourn, Kath, I think publicly we wanted to give an opportunity to our board members to say something to you if they like. I'm going to start off. I'm pretty sure that the blood in your veins is Sunrise, and it's Agassiz and Sunrise color. You spent, as a kindergarten kid in this building, and now as your last few days, certainly as going out as a superintendent. You've put us in real good shape as we move forward with transition. You took us through a really tough time, when through a pandemic. We also had a tough time with a board that wasn't easy to go ahead and work with. We're in much better shape now, certainly as we are with this board. We kid around about 4 o'clock and 5 o'clocks in the mornings, around snow days, and everybody thinks, oh, it's a great job to be the superintendent, but on those kind of times, it's not a great job to be the superintendent, and knowing that no matter what decision you make, you're going to, what's the right word I should use? You're going to tick somebody off no matter what in those kind of things. So I think that we're in real good shape. You've led us down a real good path, Kath, with your leadership and what you've done. Anyone else certainly can join in here, but you certainly made our jobs as trustees easy because of the work that you've done. So certainly on behalf of Paul and other trustees, we'll turn around and say thank you. Thank you for the work that you've done. Other trustees, did you want to join in and say something, Dawn?
better put a big mitt in my glove, on my hand. What I'd like to say, Kathy, is I really enjoyed working since I've worked under, if I remember right, 4 other superintendents. You were the one that I really enjoyed the most working with. And the reason for that, I think Kathy, is, at least to me, is very candid and very honest. When I asked her when I was being chair or anything like that, when I was chair before, if I asked her how well I did, she would tell me, you did a lousy job. Or she would tell me, you did a good job, which was very good. Because that's the kind of person I am. I know I'm very candid. Sometimes I don't want to use the word pissed off. Since you used it, I can use it too. So sometimes it pisses off people because of my nitpicking, which Paul sometimes says I nitpick. But that's what I enjoy about you. And the other thing I enjoy, doesn't matter when I phone Kathy, I leave a message, I'll say, well, always get back to me within a day, which I really enjoy. So I like to wish you, I'm not going to say happy retirement because I haven't retired, and I don't think that you retired. You are just going on to the next journey of your life. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Don. Donna?
Okay. I'm still learning. I just wanted to thank Kathy for the orientation. It was very complete and very useful. And her help for the 3 board meetings has just been wonderful. So I just want to say thank you, Kathy, for being my mentor here on the computer and the board meetings. You're welcome.
Hi, Ms. Timko. Time went fast. Our second term here for a few of us, and it has been wonderful. And I would just say that thank you for all the work you did on us and with us and for us and for our students and teachers. And I never, in all the years, had any doubt at all that our division was in the utmost competent hands, and you always had, I had the utmost confidence of what was going on in this division at all times. I knew you were in, you would know. And you did a real good job hustling and making sure everything was doing well, and great confidence in that. And I do wish you wonderful weather of this summer and lots of adventures in your future, and you know where we are. And we'll see you online. You'll be watching us online. We'll have a new viewer. So thank you so much for everything. It was wonderful.
I didn't get a lot of time with you, but I wanted to thank you for the guidance you did give me for the time I have been here. You always helped me whenever I had a question. You always give me the answers. So thank you for all the help that you did give me while I've been here. And I know you will pop in and watch us every now and then. I'm pretty sure you will check in on us every now and then. So thank you for all your help.
I appreciate your guidance and patience with me when I was new on the board 6 years ago. I guess it's 5.5, 6 years ago. As Don mentioned, I can also say that you were the best superintendent I had the pleasure to work with. Enjoy your future endeavors.
Thanks, Kath. We're adjourned.